Good afternoon. Today is Sunday, November the 7th, and this is Life Matters. Let's talk about it. Well, hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I am Michele Irby Johnson, and I am your host. And this is Life Matters with Michele. I want to thank you once again for tuning in to hear what we have to say, particularly in the African American community, not to be discriminatory, but just want to make sure that our people have the tools that they need to succeed. And today we have with us our very special guest, Mr. Marcus A. Wright. Say hello to the people.
How you doing, everybody? It's good to see you.
Wonderful. Good. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are so excited. I want to remind our viewers, our listeners, if you have a question for our guests, so please post them and I will field your question over to him. But before we jump into the show, I want to make sure that I can rightly introduce this young man to you all. Mr. Marcus A. Wright is a professional leadership, emotional intelligence, and personality coach that helps leaders, teams, innovators, and business owners get unstuck in their thinking and achieve extraordinary results. As a professional coach, he organizes accelerated excellence in leadership, engaging teams to work together to achieve their business strategy while applying the core principles of emotional intelligence and communication. His coaching presentations encourage professionals to develop their insight and accept significant challenges beyond their current scope of thinking. We know that's very important. During coaching, you will learn mindful self-awareness, which is the key to being an effective leader, communicator, and overall better team player. Marcus has managed many teams, consulted, and coached in multiple different capacities for over 25 years, and he uses his real life experiences to provide training and coaching to clients. So y'all stay tuned. We're going to put his information out there. Marcus is a results-driven leader who provides clients with transformational guidance throughout their career and life's journey. As a result, Marcus has developed the right mentality. He has a growth mindset focused on helping his clients be the best in their careers, their families, and the world. He gets inspired and energized when using his gifts to help leaders, teams, innovators, and business owners to unlock their potential. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you today none other than Mr. Marcus A. Wright. He is amazing. Hello, my friend.
How you doing? It's good to see you. Thank you so much. That is such a beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome. You are, look, I try to bring quality on. And so you, sir, are certainly a quality guest. And I'm so glad that you said yes to the invitation, because what we're going to talk about today is a vital subject. It touches all sexes, but today we're going to focus on men. So our topic today is emotional intelligence, mental health in men, because we know women, we tend to, have a better grip on our emotions and who we are. And so we're going to talk a little bit about men who don't necessarily like to tackle what's going on the inside. Am I correct about that?
I would agree. Yes, we don't like to share, and we're very good at compartmentalizing everything that we're going through.
Yes. And so because a lot of people may not have heard of the term emotional intelligence. They've heard of, intelligent quotient, IQ. is what I'm trying to say. They've heard of
Yes,
IQ,
ma'am.
they've heard of all of these various things, but not a lot of people understand what emotional intelligence is. And so, if you would, my friend, if you would give us a working definition for the common person, the average person who may not know exactly what that means.
So, emotional intelligence is just basically this: it's your ability to understand your emotions, to be able to communicate that effectively, and to understand someone else's emotions as well, and to be able to have a conversation about it. So it's not yelling and screaming, it's understanding who you are as a person, especially at any given time, because we all experience tons of emotions throughout the day. Actually, if you didn't know, you have 400 emotions per day. 400.
Wow.
So you experience many different things throughout the entire day. And on average, every person walking this planet experiences a minimum of 400 emotions per day.
Well, that is amazing. And so, going off this definition, you said it's the ability to understand
Mm-hmm.
your emotions
Mm-hmm.
and communicate them effectively, as well as being able to understand other people's emotions. Now,
Correct.
that word emotions is a touchy subject for some people because it's, some for some people they say, oh, you're getting too emotional, or she's just an emotional person, or he's not emotional enough. And you say we have over 400 in the course of a day.
Yeah.
How then is a person able to tap in, if I can say it that way? It's a little play on tap
Mm-hmm.
in. How do they tap in on who they are authentically, and then be able to translate or communicate those emotions to the people that they're involved in, whether they be personal relationships,
Mm-hmm.
professional relationships, or what have you?
That's a great question. So first, let me say that it's a difficult thing to do when you don't understand yourself. Um, a lot of us, everyone walking the planet, we all go through a journey from the time we're born to wherever we are and what point we are in our lifetime. Whether you're 20, you're 18, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, you're 80, whatever it is, right? And going through that, sometimes we don't figure out who we are until we're much older. We
Yeah.
know that we experience a ton of emotions, like I'm frustrated today. Maybe I'm angry because my significant other, made me angry about whatever. Maybe somebody cut me off when I was driving, and then there's anger there. Or maybe I'm experiencing joy. I just saw my nephew or my son or my daughter do something fantastic, and now I'm excited for them. Or maybe I'm sad because maybe I just watched something on television that reminded me of something that was sad in my life, and now I'm crying. But the reason I'm saying it that way is you're experiencing those emotions throughout the day,
Hmm.
every day. But when you don't know who you are, it's difficult for you to be able to communicate that and to talk about it. As your question, how can you understand? You have to understand you. You
Yeah.
have to understand you, and it's not an easy thing to do for us to understand each other, because we experience so many different things that happen to us. We have to take time out to reflect so that we can understand who we are. And once we do that, it's easier, not easy, it becomes easier to
Hmm.
be able to help people understand how we are from an emotional perspective and to be able to communicate that.
That is good stuff, because you gave us that there are emotions that we tap on each day, whether it be sadness or hurt or joy or sorrow, whatever the case may be. But understanding yourself means you have to understand your history. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm counseling people and I tell them, they say, well, I don't understand this, I don't understand that. I say, well, let's take a step back. Let's go into your history, teenager,
Yes.
preschooler, or what have you. I said, because something in your history has caused you to either be over
Mm-hmm.
emotional,
Mm-hmm.
not being able to tap into who you really are because you've been told who you were supposed to be. And so I think it's key that you said that people need to understand who they are. And let's
Yes.
just be honest. Most people walking around this earth have no idea who they are
No.
because they've been trying to compete with who they see on TV. They've been trying to
Hmm.
compete with sportsmen. They've been trying to compete with their family's expectations. They've been trying to compete with their job. And so, even though you may not like a particular thing, you take that thing on because you feel that that's what people want. And so, you're right. They have no clue
None.
as to who they are. They've not, as you, what did you say? They've not reflected
Correct.
on who they are in all parts, not just in part, but all parts of who they are, because they say we're the sum of all of our parts. And so if all of our emotions come together, they surmise who we are. And if we don't know that, we can't tell people how to love us.
No. No, because you don't know how to love yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. You can't tell people how to treat us on our job or how to treat us in general. I was telling somebody the other day, I said they treat you like that because you allow them to, because you've not taught them how to treat you.
That is correct. So many people don't understand that statement. Well, they're treating me bad. No, people can only treat you the way you allow them to treat you. And you will be treated that way until you understand you, what you feel, what your triggers are, what you like, what hurts you, what makes you feel a specific way. And it's difficult, especially for men, to be honest enough to say how we feel.
Mm,
Why is that? Well, for and to keep this as broad as possible, but not to be um, discriminatory, black men have had to prove themselves over and over and over again,
mm,
but to not be able to share what they feel like because it's a sign of weakness
yeah.
or because someone's going to try to take advantage of them, or it's because you feel that way. If you're sad or whatever, you can't really do the job. So guess what? I don't want to deal with you. I'm going to go deal with someone else that can handle this. And because of being a black man with 4 children, 1 son, 3 daughters, I've had to learn to show them every facet of myself, which can sometimes be difficult. It's hard, but I had to show them I can be vulnerable. I can cry. I can hurt, instead of taking it and putting it in a box, taking that box, compartmentalize it, put it on a shelf, and walk away and act like nothing's affected me at all. Well, guess what? I'm human. I'm going to get affected by it, whatever I'm going through. In
Wow.
2014, when my brother passed away, it knocked me off my feet like I never thought anything could affect me in my life. I had lost my father 7 years prior. But when I lost my brother, it just devastated me.
Mm,
But I took everything, shoved it into a box, closed the box up, put it on a shelf, and just said, I got to keep going. And during that time, Michelle, I had no feeling, I had no emotion. I was just numb. And it wasn't on purpose, it was just that I felt that I had to keep going. But then that box started opening
mm,
little by little, year after year. And my emotions were coming out, but they weren't coming out in a productive way.
mm.
They came out in anger and frustration and doubt and fear and I can't do this. And it devastated me for over 2.5 years.
Wow. Wow. One of our guests is asking the question, can emotional intelligence be taught?
Oh, yes, it can. That is the oh my goodness, that's a great question. Yes. Let me first be very clear because I didn't say this. Michelle told you about IQ a little bit, and that's your cognitive ability to understand things from an intellectual perspective, right? Well, guess what? We all peak out at 20 on that. Not that you can't learn, but you hit your peak with an IQ perspective at 20. That number doesn't go up and it doesn't really go down. Where you are is where you are. Now, you still learn. So I don't want anyone saying or believing that you can't learn. You definitely can learn. You're just at that peak from an intellectual quotient perspective when they measure you on the scale. But here's the key: EQ, emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, basically doesn't peak out until you're between 60 and 70 years old.
Wow.
So you can learn how to be more emotionally effective and communicate and understand your emotions and be in a room with people and help them with their emotions, because you can learn that every day, every year. But you don't really peak out until you're 60 or 70. That's the great thing about emotional intelligence.
That is amazing. And it's good to know because some people feel like, I've been through too much in my life. I've been
Hmm.
stuffing my emotions for all these years. So, why would I need to try and do it now? Because one, it's going to free you up from some
Yes,
stressors. But number two, it's going to allow you to then realize or understand this is who I really am. And I've been hiding myself because I didn't want the world to know my vulnerabilities. I didn't want the world to know, what my proclivities were. I didn't want the world to know, the world to know, the world to know. But the world only sees the mask that you put on.
that's
But when
correct.
you come to understand that there's an unveiling and a revelation that needs to happen within you so that the world can see the real you, then you're going to be living in the shadows of your own self, the shadows of shame or whatever the case may be. And I think it's vitally important, particularly for men, because you may have, I don't know if you've been told this, but I know of young men, young boys, or grown men who said they were told by their fathers, don't cry, don't do this, buck up, square your shoulders, be
Hmm.
strong, be a man. And what that conveys to them in their heart is that they're not allowed to be authentic and organic. They have to be this tough person who's not allowed to be their true selves. Can you
Hmm.
speak to that for a moment?
So to be quite honest, I was very blessed to come from a family where my grandparents were still alive until I was well into my late 20s. But my grandfather and my father have always taught me that any man can hide, any man can buck up, but it takes a very powerful man to be honest about how he feels.
Mm,
And it's okay to cry. It's not okay to cry so much that you can't function.
right.
That's what I was told. But I was also told that it's okay that sometimes you got to go in that room and you just got to let those tears flow. And sometimes you got to lean on your wife and let those tears flow. But when you do that, and I was told when you do that for that time period, and they were very adamant about it, that time period should be no longer than an hour. You better get
Okay.
up and then buck up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your power is going to come from looking at yourself and being vulnerable to you and being vulnerable to the person that you're with so that you can build yourself back up and get through what you're going through. Vulnerability is power. It's not where you allow someone to take advantage of you, but it allows you to say, it's okay. I failed. It's okay. I fell down. It's okay. I cried. It's okay that I got fired today. It's okay
It's
that
okay.
they laid me off. It wasn't anything that I did. They made the mistake of letting go of the best person that they hired
Yeah.
or the best person that they dealt with. And then I was taught to buck up and keep going. But yes, I was always taught that it is okay uh, to cry. I was blessed in that fashion because I hear a lot of my colleagues and my friends that I've known throughout my life that they were told that, why are you crying? Men don't cry. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to hold it in, because what you don't understand is when you hold every single emotion that you have inside of you, when it comes
Mm,
out multiple ways. It may come out in your health. You can
yep.
have a heart attack because stress kills. You can develop diabetes. You can develop all kinds of stuff from stress.
Yeah.
Why? Because some people stress eat. Some people find something they got to do with stress. So I don't mind letting it go because I'm going to let it seep out of me so that I can be a better person later.
Absolutely. And that's a beautiful thing because you are of the minority, because most men, particularly in our community,
Hmm.
grew up without their fathers in their lives. Let's just say that.
Yes,
grew
ma'am.
up grew up without a strong male figure or dominant figure in their lives, so they had nothing to glean from, and so the ones they learned from were the ones who weren't taught either. So now you have this mindset duplicating itself, you know, down centuries and generations, because somebody along the way didn't stop and say, hey, it's okay, just like your
Yes.
grandfather did with you. And so I think it's important for men of today to start, um, their nephews and their sons and all of these male spawn that we have, that they need to start pouring that into them and let them know, yes, you can cry, but don't be a cry baby. You can
Right.
have emotions, but don't become emotional to the extent that everything is anger and aggression, because behind anger and aggression is really somebody who's weeping, but they just don't know how.
They
And
don't know
so
how.
they've been told that they can't cry. So it comes out in poor behavior and bad grades and not being able to function on the job and all of the, the counselor in me is coming out. But anyway,
But
and
that's true.
so,
You're correct.
yeah.
You are correct.
And so I think we do a disservice to our community, particularly our men, because women, like I said, we have a handle on our emotions. Yes, we can get emotional, but one thing we will do is sit down and talk about it. We
Hmm.
will have a cry session. We'll get ourselves a half pint of ice cream, and then we'll sit there, and then we'll eventually get it out. But we're talking about the mental health of men. That is an extension of lack of emotional intelligence. And I want to remind everybody once again, we're talking to none other than Marcus A. Wright, and we're discussing emotional intelligence and the mental health in men. And it's vitally important that men understand that being a loose valve is not going to help you or anybody that's around you.
What I would tell men, my brothers out there, it's very important. Um, Even if you can't talk about it right now, to write it.
Mm,
See, journaling does it's a healer, and it took me a long time to understand how vital and how important it was to journal, right? Because I'm like, I can handle this. Whatever. I'm going through this. So what took me on my journey? I'm gonna take you all the way back for me in August 15th, 2000. The one of and I have five women that are very important in my life that have made me who I am. But the beginner, the first teacher, my grandmother passed away,
mm,
and I was very close to her. Then 7 years after that, my dad died. Then 7 years after that, my brother died. And then 2 years after that, my uncle died. And then 1 year after that, my maternal grandmother passed.
mm.
So all of this happened in a time span of about 17 years, with four or five major people that have affected me and taught me and was there for me through my life passed. And I
Mm.
held on to all of that. But like I told you just a moment ago, the one that made me different, that knocked me down, that was difficult for me to get up, was losing my brother, the
Wow.
only brother I had biologically. And I learned to write at that moment. And I didn't know when I was writing that I was helping myself. I started the first year after he died. Then I said, this is a mess. I'm going to put it to the side. This doesn't make sense. This is not helping me. But it was just anger. I was hiding behind my hurt and my anger. I
Yeah.
was not emotionally aware. I had no emotional self awareness. I lost who I was. And then a couple years later after that, somebody told me that didn't even know who I was. Journal. I
Mm.
just had a 5 minute conversation. And they walked up and said, journal. You need a journal. And I didn't see them. I haven't seen them since that day. That one person. But I've journaled. And for the men, and the reason I say men, it's helped me to have a clearer sight of what I'm trying to do. It helped me to have a clear sight of how I feel. And it helped me to have clear sight on how to communicate better. So before I even came deep into emotional intelligence and understanding this thing, I had no idea that I was put on a journey of understanding myself by journaling, by
Yeah.
writing my vulnerabilities. I didn't talk about it yet, but I wrote about it. So it's like you're writing to yourself. So you're having a conversation with you. That's what's important for men, so that we can have the conversation with someone else, so that we can become more emotionally. self-aware, and so that we can admit that, you know what, we go through stuff too, and we can't compartmentalize everything.
Hmm.
Remember, like I said, I put it in a box.
Yeah.
The box slowly started opening every day, and it got worse, and every day it just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I had no control. And my daughters were like, "My daddy is really different," and it took them to tell me multiple times that I was different for me to start to realize it and to sit down and to open up.
Yeah.
And that's a hard lesson for a man, especially a man of color,
Yeah.
because then we learn that we're hurting, we're lost, and we can't be, because we're supposed to be the strong ones. We're
But
supposed to take care of the family. We're not supposed to fail. I know if any of my brothers out there, they know where I'm coming from. That's how we feel.
yeah,
It's not the correct feeling.
it's not. And here's the thing, and you touched on it. You didn't say this word, but essentially, this is the essence of what you were saying. Give yourself permission.
Yes, ma'am.
Give yourself permission to be vulnerable, to express your pain as long as it does not hurt somebody else, but express it to the extent that you can say, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and why am I feeling it to that degree? Or
Hmm.
why am I not feeling it to that degree? Like you said, when you lost your I think you said your grandmother, or your grandfather, you lost somebody. You just said it because you said you lost so many people in 17 years. I lost track, but you said you could not feel. But you have to give yourself permission to ask yourself questions. Why am I so stoic? Why do I not feel like this? Why am I hiding? And these are conversations we should have with ourselves on a regular basis. And I think our emotional intelligence can mature along with us, as long as we know the questions to ask of ourselves, and then give the response that's going to help us get better, right?
Yes, ma'am. So when we go through things, which is great, thank you for clearing it up. And it was my brother where I felt so numb.
Yes, sir.
When we
Thank you.
when we go through things, we don't realize that when we're in a very stressful situation, here's what happens to everyone, every one of us. If we have not the best emotional intelligence, not the best understanding of ourselves, when we're in a stressful situation, it's very difficult for us to make the proper decisions
Mm,
because our decision making becomes affected. It's also difficult for us to have a real look at reality, our personal reality, what we're going through. We look at it through, as I said, what is it? Dirty lenses. We
rose
don't,
colored glasses.
yes, we don't see the truth. Then when that happens, it affects our interpersonal skills. How do we relate to other people around us? How do I relate to my wife? How do I relate to my children? How do I relate to the people at my job? How do I relate to just everyday people?
Mm,
Those are three things that happen when our stress level is through the roof. And if we're feeling like we can't open up, we hold on to stress. And
mm,
as you get older, um, and I'm 50 now, but when I was 20, it didn't affect me as much
right.
because we're younger, we think we're invincible. But over time, those stressful things build up in your body and in your mind, and it affects everything that you do. And your stress level, it just continues to grow. And again, like I said, stress affects your decision making, affects your reality of how you look at the world and how you're looking at things, how you view them. And it affects your ability to have even interpersonal relationships with people, to be able to talk to them. But it also affects something that is very important. It affects your ability to have empathy.
Right.
And if
Right.
you can't empathize with other people, let alone yourself, you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
We have to be truthful to ourselves, and we have to give ourselves as men permission. And I love that you said that, Michelle. We have to give ourselves permission to say it's okay to be vulnerable. And it's okay to go seek a counselor.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a counselor to help us to get through our emotions.
Mm,
But we're so proud as a race. and so proud as men, I don't have time to go see a counselor. Well, I'm gonna
And that
ask you a question.
could be your saving grace.
If you don't have any opportunity because you're too busy and too stubborn to see a counselor, do me a favor. In about 6 months, go see the doctor and get a blood test and ask yourself, are you in good health or are you in average health? Because I'm
Hmm.
telling you right now, if you don't start talking about it, it's going to start affecting your health, and it will
Absolutely.
affect it big time hard. Your blood pressure is going to go up. I mean, high blood pressure is common in the African American community. It is.
Absolutely.
It ain't people think it's just what you. It's not just the food we eat. It's the things that we allow in our mind
Yeah.
that affects us stressfully, that
Yeah.
affects our emotions, that makes us helps us to make not the best decisions.
Yeah, yeah. This is good stuff. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to none other than Marcus A. Wright, and we're discussing emotional intelligence and particularly mental health as it relates to men. We have a question from our audience. It was asking about how should, I'm sorry. Oh, let me do this one. Men deal with trust issues.
Hmm.
So, what are some of the strategies to build trust, particularly as it relates to emotional intelligence?
Well, you got to trust you first,
Oh,
and a
come
lot of
on, sir.
times we second guess ourselves.
Yeah,
So to build trust issues with yourself, you probably gonna get tired of me saying it, but you got to journal because you need to write down what you're going through at that moment, so that you can look at it in a true, true picture in your mind. See, because when we lock stuff in our brain, people don't get it, and this is so true. When you're going through something and you keep it up here, it affects you all day long,
yeah,
all week long, all month long. But when you take it out of here to write it down, you remove it from here and you put it on paper. Now you can see it as a visualization, it's there.
mm,
And so there's something that you don't trust about you. You need to write it down so you can trust it. Maybe you don't trust that if you make you don't trust that you make good decisions. Maybe you don't trust that you've chosen the right person to be in your life.
mm,
And I'm not talking about significant others. I mean, we'll get there in another time.
yeah,
But I'm talking about friendships right now.
yeah,
Make nobody mad. But from a friendship perspective, maybe you think that you're running with the right group of your boys. But you start writing down stuff and you start to notice that, you know, Jordan is not the right guy to hang out with because every time I hang out with him, these things happen.
yeah,
See, because you're not trusting your judgment. Because if you did trust your judgment, you know what he's doing already. If it's something that he's not supposed to do, you're not going to want to be around because you don't want to be in that situation.
exactly.
That's the first step to developing trust within yourself. Once you start to develop trust within yourself, then you start to learn who you can trust because you start to recognize what they're doing that could affect you in a positive or a negative way, but you'll start to understand that. That's the beginning. And then that's how you start to trust your emotions.
And that's good stuff. You said when you were talking about, Jordan and hanging with Jordan and seeing that, you're realizing what Jordan is doing. That's the part that people don't get, is actually emotional intelligence. When you start seeing a pattern and
Hmm.
then you start being your authentic self and saying, you know what, I don't want this, because the person who does not lean into emotional intelligence will continue to let themselves be party to, foolishness, and to
Hmm.
what all the gang is doing, and not thinking for themselves. And so you let your emotional intelligence fall by the wayside because you want to feel a part, you want to be in the gang, you want to be a part of the in crowd, but
That's right.
you've lost yourself, essentially. And so you're not operating in emotional intelligence. But the moment you realize, because I always tell myself, I heard myself say that, that's my emotional intelligence kicking in and saying, you know what, we're going to have to do something different. You know what, that's not working for me.
Correct.
You and I had a very important conversation the other day. I'll say is very important. We were talking about social media, and we won't go into names and all of that. And we were both talking about, how we felt about it. But when I share that with other people, they're like, well, you need to get on board. You need to get with everybody else. This is what everybody else is doing. But my emotional intelligence tells me I don't like it. I don't want to do it. So you
Right.
can't make me because that's what everybody else is doing. I'm not following the status quo. I'm not trying to be like everybody else. Yes, it's a necessary evil for most people, but if I start, leaning into what everybody else is doing, so I better do it, then I'm putting my emotional intelligence to the side and I'm becoming a pawn.
Yeah. My grandmother used to always tell me, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. Don't be the rule, be the exception to the rule.
Absolutely.
So just because everyone else is doing that, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the path that you need to go down.
Yeah.
You have to be strong enough to say, I'm going to create my own path. I'm going to
Mm.
create my own way. So, in that conversation about social media, we decided that we will use it when we need to, but we have a bigger vision that doesn't always use social media.
Yes, sir.
And going back to Jordan, as growing up. So let me give everybody really, really quickly. I grew up in Chicago. Okay, that's where I'm from. I didn't grow up, and I want to be real with you. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. Okay, I grew up in the projects. Okay, I ran the streets. I had friends that were doing all kinds of stuff. I'm just gonna be real. I've been stabbed 7 times from running the streets and doing my thing. Guess what? I had to realize that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Even though I had my dad in my life, which I did, and my grandparents were there, I still was fascinated by the street. That's where I wanted to be. Well, I had to make a decision to either stay in it or not. Now, a lot of the people that I grew up with, most of them are dead. A certain number of them are still incarcerated to this day. They're still incarcerated. So I have three friends that are three people that I know. I won't call them friends, but three people that I know that are serving a life sentence. But those are things that they decided to do. So when you are trying to build trust in yourself, you ask yourself, do I want to be a statistic? They already want us to be statistics
All
anyway.
right. All right.
So you need to ask you, do I want to be a statistic, or do I want to change things up and be different?
Yeah.
Do I want to be smart enough to know that if I take the time out to develop my emotional intelligence, I'm going to go further in life? Because I want to tell everybody this: IQ is very important. It is. But without emotional intelligence, your EQ, when you go to that job and you're trying to go up, when you start in that company and you're trying to build it out, without emotional intelligence, you will not be successful, because it's not your IQ that gets you there, it's your EQ that gets you there, because it's about being able to understand yourself and to be able to be relatable to other people.
That's good.
Anybody can be smart. I know people that have been the valedictorian of a few things, like my valedictorian for high school. I just saw him the other day. Smartest guy I ever met, but he didn't do well after college because he didn't have the emotional intelligence to conform. He was too technically smart. IQ. He could not get along with other people.
Book
He
sense, but
isolated himself.
no common sense.
Correct.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we're talking to Marcus A. Wright, and we are talking about emotional intelligence, particularly in men and their mental health status. Our time is eking away, but I wanted to ask you a question about do you think that emotional intelligence can be taught in schools, or should it be taught in school?
Oh my God, this is a whole 24-hour conversation. Yes, it needs to be taught in schools today. It is a known fact. It has been documented. And I am listen, forgive me, forgive me. But I am so tired of all of these politicians right now talking about this critical race theory. I'm so sick of hearing it. You need to be talking about adding emotional intelligence to these school systems and to the curriculum. Why is that important? It is so important because most kids have an issue with getting better grades and doing better things in life because that isn't being taught to them.
Yeah.
They don't understand their emotions, let alone the emotions of the kids that they're dealing with. They don't understand why kids are bullying. Oh my God, I can talk about this all day now. This
Well,
is old.
I'm gonna bring you back then because we can make that a topic at another time in
Woo.
2022 because that I think it starts at home. I think it starts when I say home, meaning on the ground level. We
Yes.
don't we don't teach rudimentary things. We think the school is going to do everything, and if we don't give them some type of foundation at home, of course, all that proliferates through who they hang out with and who they choose because they want something different than their home life because my home life is so straight. I want to go do this. I want to do that. And so I think it's very important. So we're just gonna put a pin in that, and we're gonna make a whole show off of EI in being taught in schools because I think it's important as well, Marcus, because I think it trying to catch, capture, and change somebody in their 20s that we should have caught, captured, and changed when they were 5 is
Yes.
very difficult.
Yes.
Very difficult. Not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult to reshape somebody once the dendrites have come together and all of the everything in their minds have connected, and it's hard to reshape. Not impossible, but it's more
It's
difficult because
difficult.
people have been set in their minds. They've been set in their ways, and so yes, I'm gonna bring you back. We're gonna have to put a date on the calendar because
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think we need to talk about that at length. Somebody put in here, this is my husband. He says, how would you assess emotional intelligence or mental health from a counselor's perspective? He said that one's for me.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Well, for me, again, when you first have someone come into your counseling session, and I'm sure there are counselors who are watching this, who will listen to this, and all of these various things, depending on your lane of counseling. I deal with trauma, I deal with crisis, and so if you don't give them an opportunity to take a look at where they've been,
Hmm.
then they're not going to own up to where they are. And so if you have somebody who's been traumatized when they were 5 years old and they're 35, they've never dealt with it, and then you don't help them to understand that down through 30 years, things that you have done in your life has been based off of what happened then your emotional intelligence is going to be crippled as a result of that because you're going to always think that you have to do it because that's what your abuser would have thought. You have to do it because that's what they told you to do. You have to
Hmm.
do it because that's how you were protecting yourself. And so from an emotional intelligence standpoint, when it comes to trauma and counseling, all of those different things, you have to find a way to marry them so that the counselee, if you will, can understand that there is connectivity between the trauma and where you are today and how you utilize or underutilize your own emotional intelligence. So that's a whole nother show, baby. I'm talking to my husband. It's a whole nother show. We're going to talk about that later. But that was a good question. It really, really was. And so um can you say that a person so let me step back. What type of EI is there? You said self-awareness, but what other things come under that umbrella
So,
would be helpful to our listeners?
so for me, I work with emotional quotient, emotional intelligence factor 2.0, which is a step up from what was created um, about 5 years ago. But emotional intelligence actually started in the 80s. However, there are 5 factors of emotional intelligence,
Okay.
and then there's 15 sub factors
Oh,
for each one of those. So this would take a very long time to talk about.
well,
But
can you list the five
so
factors?
I
So at
can
least I
tell
can.
you that one of I listed 3 earlier, which is interpersonal, decision making, stress management. Um, the other one is self perception.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and forgive me, I'm going a little blank.
It'll come
I'm
back to
probably going
you.
to get this one wrong. It's self regard, but I'll get it so that they are all listed
Positive
out.
self-regard.
Yeah, it's just self regard. But what happens is there are 3 subcategories under each of those factors. So when the young lady or the person asked about the question before, and Michelle, I'll get this to you so that you can put it out there, and I'm okay with that for sure, so your viewers can see it. But when she asked the question, um, I don't know if it's a male or female, but when the person asked the question before, how do you or can your emotional intelligence grow? Yes, it can, because what will happen is you would end up taking an assessment, and then it will tell me in each category what your score is, and in each subcategory, so that I can work with you in those areas where you need growth.
Mm.
And then there are specific questions and specific things that I coach you on. This gets emotional intelligence coaching gets very deep because a person needs to be a little vulnerable
Yeah.
to be able to open up to those things when they take the assessment. But those are the five factors, and then there's three subcategories with those factors, and then the final thing that gives you the total is the 16th subfactor, which I will name is your happiness.
Mm.
So it measures those five factors along with the three subcategories in each section, which
Mm-hmm.
gives you 15 subcategories, and then it measures your happiness score. And
Mm-hmm.
then I work with you on each one of those areas so that you can grow that score and grow your emotional intelligence.
That's
And it helps
amazing.
you become the most important thing is emotional self awareness, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because if you're not self aware, I can't, you can't, we can't, no one can move into any direction that they want to go into because they don't know who they are.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are talking to Marcus A. Wright, and we are talking about emotional intelligence, particularly dealing with the mental health of men. If any of you out there listening to me, if any of you out there listening to this show, if you would like to get in touch with Marcus for an assessment, for coaching, to get yourself all the way together to find out who you really are, I encourage you to reach out to him on his website at www.marcusawright.com. That's Marcus with a C. That's MARCUS, the letter A, WRIGHT.com. You can email him at marcus@marcusawright.com, and you can reach him on all social media platforms at Right Mentality. That's WRIGHT mentality, all one word. I promise you, ladies, men, everybody in between, if you need to understand who you are, let this gentleman help you to find out where you are and how to get you to a better place. Once again, reach out to Marcus A. Wright. Email him, marcus@marcusawright.com. You will not be disappointed. He knows his stuff. He's going to help you. He's going to help you help yourself. And I promise you, you're going to get yourself all the way together so you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing in this life. Okay? Yes, yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. So this is amazing. So there was a question somebody asked, and I don't want to overstep, but there was a question that somebody asked that really, really, really got me, and I'm gonna search for it. But until then, if you can talk a little bit about, um, would you change anything about yourself now that you're aware? Is there anything beyond where you are now that you would want to change about Marcus? Because we have to know about us first. Because as preachers, we know that, so we got to preach to ourselves first. So how do you gauge yourself, and if there's anything that you would change about yourself, if it's not too much for the people's ears,
I don't mind. Um,
what would that
to
be?
be quite honest, I wouldn't change anything because for me, the journey that I've had has formed and made me the person that I am today. I grew up in a very loving household, but a very positive household, meaning that you can do anything you want to do. No one can tell you you can't. It's up to you to get in the way of what you can and cannot do.
Mm.
Now, if I could change a time period in my life,
Oh.
I would change how I reacted to when my brother passed.
Mm.
Because that time period, that 3 years from 2014, from November 1st at 12, 12:02 a.m. because my brother died at 12:01 a.m. At 12:02 a.m. up until 2018, I would change that
Mm,
because that I wasn't myself. I wasn't the best person. I wasn't the nicest person. I wasn't the most aware person of me. I wasn't honest with myself, and I let the way that I felt, it almost destroy who I was as a person. I almost lost everything
wow.
because I was so torn up about my brother. So if I could change anything about me, I would change that time period of my life. Just those 3 years.
And I get it. And the blessed thing about that, if I can say it this way, is that God doesn't waste anything. And so even in that season of your life, even though it wasn't productive, even though you didn't feel like yourself, God is now using that experience as a catalyst to help you do even better with what you're doing with the people now, because now you have something that's very visceral to your spirit, that's going to be realistic for other people when they say, well, I don't know if I can do it. You can speak to it and say, yes, you can.
Yeah, you
You
can.
can come out of this pit. You can come out of despair. You can come out of depression. I don't mean to put preaching on, but I feel like that right now.
I appreciate it.
But the point is, God doesn't waste a moment in our lives. So when we go through these seasons that don't feel so good, and we deal with what we call the vicissitudes of life, and they don't feel good to us,
Right.
when we look back on them, hindsight being 2020, we are now able to use that pain and use that frustration and use all of those things that we dealt with and didn't want to deal with, and we pour them into who we are now. And all
Mhm.
it does is, if I can say for a better word, it shores us up in a different way, so we're able to speak even more poignantly to
Mhm.
people's situations. And so even though you didn't like it and you didn't appreciate it, I thank God for it, because it made you the man that you are today, and you're able to be an even more productive anchor to people who need to know who they are. And so, I again,
That
I
is
know it didn't
so
feel good.
beautifully said. Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. I mean, I promise you, because the man that I met not even a year ago, I met you what in April earlier this year,
Yeah,
and it feels like
I can't
we're
remember.
connected like this because we have a goal that we're going towards, and that is helping people. That is to ensure that people get on the right track and they're able to utilize their lives to the best of their ability and for the purpose that God has established them in the earth. Few announcements, and then we're going to have you give us final words. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to remind you that we've been talking to Marcus A. Wright. If you want to reach out to him, please email him at marcus@marcusawright.com, and he can help you with your emotional intelligence. And if you don't know where it is, he'll help you find it. All right. Want to also remind you all to pre-order my 2 books that are now out. Boots and Beyond, Stories of Trials, Tragedy, Triumph, and Transition. That one drops on November the 11th, Veterans Day. So you can get you can pre-order your copy by sending me an email at michele@iam-mij.com. That's Michele at iam-mij.com. And my second book that's dropping December 6th, you can pre-order that. And that is called My Bald is Beautiful, I Am Not My Hair. Both of these are anthologies where we have stories from people from both walks of life, or various walks of life, that are telling their stories that are going to encourage you to either get through the transitions and the triumphs and the tragedies, or who's going to tell you that you can be beautiful even without hair. All right. Yes. Yes. You can also tune
Mhm.
into my channel at YouTube, which is Life Matters with Michele TV official. You can catch this show and every show for the past 3 seasons and every show going forward. You can certainly watch that. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you can see all future shows. You can also listen to me on every Friday at 4:00 p.m. on sensationalsoundsradio.net. You can hear the audible version of this exact same show on Fridays at 4:00 p.m. on sensationalsoundsradio.net. And to be a guest on my show for 2022, I'm booking for 2022. Please send me an email or you can go to my website, which is iam-mij.com/contact us. Phew. I think that's it. That's it. Back to my friend and my brother, Marcus A. Wright, discussing emotional intelligence and mental health for in men. If you can give us some final thoughts, some closing words to help the people before we sign off.
Well, one quick question: were you able to find that question that you needed? If not, don't worry about it.
It's okay.
Okay. So here's what I would tell my brothers, and for everyone, but especially my boys out there. Listen, we all go through a lot of trials. We are affected in our jobs. We're affected at home because we're concerned about our families. We're affected by so many different things that just affect. It just bothers every day. When you're driving down the street, you don't know if you're going to be pulled over and be harassed.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to encourage you that anything that happens to you to always remain calm, because a calm mind is the best mind. It allows you to think effectively and correctly. An angry mind clouds judgment, and it allows you to think ineffectively and and it allows you to make bad decisions. So always react in any situation as best you can with a calm mind. I'm going to also ask you, if you don't have a journal, pick one up. I'd like for you to start journaling. Start getting those things that you have thought about, you've been affected with, out of your mind. Because when it's in your brain, it's locked and
Mm.
it's in your body. It's just not up here, it affects the whole body. So I encourage you to write how you're feeling. And if you don't want to write, everybody got a phone. Type
Talk.
it in there, lock it up so no one sees your thoughts if that's what you don't want, because it'll help you get to the point to really communicate and be very intimate with your significant other and with your children and with what you want to do in life. If you need to reach me, Michelle's told you how to do that. I am all open to talk to you. I'm here to do what I can to help you. And believe me, I've been through more than you know. This is only an hour. If I sat here and talked about all the stuff I've been through, we'd be on here for about 8 for 4 days straight. So
Yeah.
my words of encouragement is journal and know that there's nothing wrong with what you're going through. Those are just challenges, and you can survive because you're a warrior. God didn't make you just a survivor. You're a warrior. Go to war. I don't mean pick up and beat somebody. I'm not talking about that. Go to war with your mind. Write it
Yeah.
out. Win that battle.
Yeah.
And then stay encouraged.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much once again to my lovely guest, if I can call you lovely,
Yes, ma'am.
Marcus A. Wright, who has been discussing emotional intelligence and mental health in men. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. This is Life Matters with Michele, where we talk about what matters to you, and you. God bless, and we'll talk to you again next week.